Welcome back to Podcasting for Financial Professionals, where you learn the best marketing tips and tricks and what's working now so you can implement them in your podcast. I'm Virginia Elder, your host and owner of the podcast production agency, Podcast Abundance, the leading provider of audio and video production for financial service professionals. Today, Jeff Kikel of Freedom Day Wealth Management, host of the Freedom Nation podcast, shares the exact strategy to start producing content for your business with a long-term mindset, how to build toward accomplishing all of your media and publishing goals that feel really out of reach right now, and how the common misunderstanding that compliance won't let you create content for your business is holding you back. He shares his experience and some advice about dealing with compliance, what hyper niching is, and how it has fueled his businesses, emphasis on multiple businesses there, and how he's using LinkedIn now to build a community primed and ready for his services. Jeff has walked the walk. He's worked for the big brokerages and has established his own independent RIA. And he talks the talk. He's got hundreds of his own podcast episodes on at least 3 different currently publishing podcasts, plus all of his guest interviews and at least 14 published books. So if ever you were looking to learn from a financial advisor who's also got serious media credentials and you want to know how they did it, this is the episode for you. Let's jump in. Jeff, thanks for being here with me today.
Thanks, Virginia. I'm excited to be on the show.
What is coming to mind now is what you mentioned earlier. We were kind of talking about compliance a little bit and like the fear around compliance. And you shared that like intentionally you created and went the like independent RIA route so that you could create content. So for those who are independent, great. I think, compliance is going to be a much simpler process.
Those who are in the RIA world, it's a lot simpler. I had traditionally always been in the broker dealer world, which everybody has the fear of compliance in the broker dealer world. And when I went to work for an RIA, it was just like, wow, this is like a breath of fresh air. And then because when I worked for a broker dealer, that's where I wrote my first book, working at a broker dealer or working at an RIA. And, literally all I had to do was I went to the compliance officer and I'm like, hey, I want to write this book. Here's what it's about, everything else. And he's like, hey, well, when you get done, just send it to me. I'll review it real quick, make sure there's nothing in there. And then we'll launch it. You'll be good. And, I was like, good Lord, I working at, Fidelity and Schwab, I mean, their heads would have exploded had I said, that I wanted to write a book. I mean, heaven forbid we share any new information with the world. But, it was very specific. When we launched my original independent practice, I mean, my partner and I sat down, and he had been in the RIA world his whole life. I had been in the broker dealer world most of mine. And we very specifically were like, hey, this is what we want to do to be different. We want to be able to share information on social media, on YouTube, on everything. And I just didn't want to fight with a compliance department. So, we formed an independent practice. We hired an independent compliance company, which I still work with today. I just, after I sold my interest in that business, I launched my new one. And I've continued to work with the same compliance company. It cost me a couple $100 a month, because that's what everybody's concerned that, oh my God, if you did independent, who's going to be the compliance part? And for like $200 a month, you have a compliance department. And I just send them stuff. If I have questions, most of it, I don't do anything controversial that I really have to worry about that with.
Mhm.
But if there's something I'm like, not so sure, I just run it by the compliance guys and they're like, nah, you're good.
Yeah.
Just if it's something new, other than that, it's pretty much I just generate content. And I've been through my first audit. My first state audit was like 18 months after I started the firm. And I mean, with all the stuff that I do, they had not a problem. In fact, they barely even talked about it.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing holding people back from writing those books or creating the podcasts or, any of the content is just this fear. It's just the unknown, oh my God, compliance department scariness. And a lot of times they've not even tried or they tried, but got immediate pushback and said like, oh, okay, I guess we can't do this.
I just can't. It can't be done.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You've got to.
Yeah.
If you have a compliance
can't.
department that is unwilling, that's probably not the company you want to continue to do business with, quite frankly, because you have to understand that, especially as an RIA, let's say that's under a broker-dealery kind of company, you're their client. So they don't own you. They can't tell you what to do because you have the right to take your business someplace else. And if they want to keep your business, they need to work with you. So if you're not getting what you need, then maybe that's the opportunity to take a look someplace else. Maybe that's the opportunity to start thinking about, maybe I want to be an independent so I don't have to deal with this kind of stuff. But the reality of our industry is, if you don't get this stuff right, and if you don't start putting content out, you're in a dying part of the business, because people like me have tons of content out there. I mean, I just searched, I was trying to find a picture of myself, and I was just like, okay, I don't have it on this new computer and I don't have access to it because the other computer's at home. And I Googled Jeff Kikel. And if you want to, Google Jeff Kikel, and you're going to find probably 12 pages on Google of just stuff. And it's podcasts, it's, podcasts that I've been on. I mean, it's books and everything else. So it's all this stuff that's out there that a client that is researching me, because they research you. I hate to tell you this. They're going to research you. And if they go, all right, Joe Schmo, financial advisor over here, or Jeff Kikel, well, I Googled Jeff Kikel and there's 10 pages of stuff on Google about Jeff Kikel, and Joe Schmo, there's nothing about, maybe a LinkedIn post or, a LinkedIn, listing, and that's it. Who do you think they're going to do business with at that point?
Yeah. Well, and I think the other big question is, like, if you are getting pushback, you can ask like, okay, how can I create this, produce this? Like, what needs to be changed? What's wrong? Like, ask questions and turn around and give them pushback too. And then if the answer is like, no, it can't be done, just like a huge wall up, well, then that's where it's like, well, maybe this isn't the right place. Because I agree with you, like with any business, even the service provider space, like where I'm at producing shows, they look you up. And if you don't have social media presence, LinkedIn presence, your website, various evidence of speaking on stage or on podcast, like there has to be this, like, it's more than social proof. It's like social online proof that you're somebody, right? So I think that's so important.
Well, and I think the other important part of it is it also opens up, you're a real person. So if I don't particularly, in today's world, I don't particularly like to meet with clients in my office, and I certainly don't go to them ever. So 95 to 96% of my client appointments are online. So that means the world is open to me effectively. I can work anywhere in the world, specifically in the United States. I mostly work in Texas, but I have clients all over the country. So they're very comfortable with the fact that Jeff's a real person, and he has very specific concepts that he's the only one that does these. So if I want to deal with Jeff, or if I want that concept, there's only one of him that can do all this stuff. So they come to me as a result. And I get probably 1 to 2 new clients out of state every month as a result of that.
Even though you're not marketing in that space.
Even though I'm not even trying, trust me, I don't purposely do that, because I might hit the 5, in a state, and then I'm going to have to spend thousands of dollars to get,
Yes.
licensed in the state and everything else, and have to deal with all the details of that. But, if I pick up 1 or 2 clients in a state, I'm fine with that. It's great.
So
Money's money.
let's talk about, because I'm sure people are hearing, okay, you've got all these books, you've got all these shows, you're launching a new show, you obviously guest on other people's shows. It's that feeling of like, where do I even start? This is so much to do. It feels like a lot on your plate. Like, how does someone ease into this a little bit?
Yeah, the best advice that I learned was, from one of my heroes in this business, Russell Brunson. Pick one thing and do that one thing for a year. Whether you like to write, then set up a blog and start writing. If you like to talk, set up a podcast. Do a podcast for a year. If you like video and you like being on video, set up a YouTube channel. Do that for a year. One of my favorite podcasters, John Lee Dumas, who's the reason I started podcasting, is because I started listening to John's show, and I've become a friend with him. And, he was asked one time, well, what do you attribute your success to? And he says, well, for 2,000 episodes, I got up every morning, I recorded a podcast, and I posted that podcast online until I got to 2,000 shows. And I was successful in that process. So it is repetition. It is putting that information out. Does not mean that you have to be the social media genius and put all this stuff out there. It doesn't mean you have to be like podcaster extraordinaire. Pick one and get started. And then once you mastered that one, then start to add those other bits and pieces in. But people want multimedia approach. Some people, for me, I have a hard time focusing on audio. So I don't listen to a lot of podcasts because my mind just doesn't stay straight. But I listen to audiobooks, and I learned a technique of, I buy a book and the audiobook, and I listen to the audio while I'm reading the book. And it helps me keep my mind focused, because my mind's like in 1,000 different directions. I like video. I like to see something, and I like, anything that's being demonstrated to me, I have to physically see it. You cannot talk to me about it and do that. So you got to make sure you're out there for everything in every format, so that, if you do a podcast, every podcast I do, it goes on YouTube and it goes onto the podcast channels. Boom, that takes care of 2 people. I typically take the transcript of a podcast and I turn it into a blog article, which the software we use to do editing, I don't know which one you use, but the one we use is Descript, which it is able to do that. And it's also able to take the social media, it's able to create social media clips out of that video, which we've turned into audio. And then, that gets put up on all the different channels. So I only do the work once. And then I've got all this stuff in other formats that we can do. And then I hire somebody, just like Virginia, I hire somebody to do all that work of publishing it and all that, so that I can do what I do, which is my genius level, which is creating the content and working with clients. I don't do all this other stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree. Descript is a great way to get started if that is either what your team likes or especially for like more of an individual who is trying to do it all. I love Descript, and that is my recommendation for getting started, right? Like at any point you want to outsource it, then there's a million editing options out there. And so like for me, I don't police what my team members use as long as the end result is good. But yeah, that is a perfect highlight of creating content, not just in one lane of like your own preference, but getting things so that no matter how someone learns or no matter how their brain works or their strengths are or whatever lifestyle they have, there is something that they can consume, whether it's visual, whether it's reading, whether it's audio, maybe it's just social media and they don't even ever go to people's websites, but they'll, click by through a posts or something like that, right? So it's that concept that you're everywhere, even though you aren't probably spending time on all of those platforms. And I think that's the overwhelming piece a lot of times is like you think just because you do Instagram posts that you have to spend time on Instagram. Well, I mean, yes and no, right?
As Gary Vee puts it, I don't consume content, I create content.
Yes. And
I spend an average, it's funny, my wife is the one who's on Facebook a lot. And she's like, oh, did you see this, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, I don't. I rely on you to do that because I don't.
Tell me what you
I spend
see.
virtually no time on Facebook. I have a half hour scheduled per day on LinkedIn because I'm working on a project this year on LinkedIn. And so I've got a very specific time every day that I go in, and the people that I've engaged, I have conversations with through, the messenger functions. But other than that, I don't really look. I just don't have the time to monkey with that. And so I have a very specific go through, look at the things that are activity stuff that's popped up. People's birthdays, change jobs. They put posts out so I can make sure that I comment on them and share them with people and all that. That can all be done in 30 minutes or less every day.
Yeah. Well, and I love that specific blocking of your calendar and your time and your energy. Obviously, your focus is to create content and work with clients, like you said. And then there's some initiatives like your LinkedIn project and things within those overarching themes. So tell me, how does someone work toward positioning themselves to where their only roles in their business is to work with the clients and to create content about the business? I mean, obviously there's a ton of other moving parts. So, walk us through what that looked like for you. And you, I'm curious about your story because you do have so many businesses. You've sold businesses. So you've been, let's say, practicing at this for a while. But how does someone position themselves that way?
Well, I mean, once again, you got to have a plan. What I will tell you, it took me a while to get successful businesses going. The power of AI in today's world accelerates that beyond belief. I could not create the level of content, launch businesses like I've done without leveraging AI. And I leverage multiple AI. Each one has its own unique benefits, and I think the thing I learned more than anything is you've got to learn where the AI pulls its information from. So, I'll give you an example. ChatGPT largely pulls a lot of information out of Wikipedia, which I think was created by the devil. In a lot of cases, it's just not good content, but they're getting better with it. Grok uses X primarily, so it pulls all that information from X. Perplexity pulls all of its information largely from Reddit and some of those areas. Claude pulls information from other areas. So you have to really kind of learn where all those fall together. But start with something, and if you're sitting there going, okay, where do I get started? Go to ChatGPT and just put in one very simple prompt. I am looking at launching I'm looking at launching myself out in the public more, utilizing a strategy. I need you to think as a marketing strategist and help me to develop a strategy for this. Do that and see what happens, and have a conversation with it. Don't just put in, how do I start doing stuff on YouTube? It's going to give you you've got to give it context, and you've got to tell it how to think. I need you to think as a marketing person, a marketing expert working with financial advisors. The more information you can give it and the more you can hem it in, the better it's going to be. And it's going to give you a list. And maybe even try the same thing on Grok and see what the answer is. I often will do that. I'll kind of pit them against each other, because the one thing I will say is chat sometimes is a little biased in its approach. It's getting better because they've gotten caught on some things. Grok is absolutely not biased because they won't let it be biased in that case. So, try a couple different answers, but that would be my first starting point so every time I do that, then it's like, okay, I'm starting a podcast. I need some ideas for the first 20 shows of that podcast. Okay, boom, it'll give you a list of things to talk about. Great. Now, can you help me write a script for this? Yes, boom, and just leverage it to get the information in there. And then once you get the information, then you start with, okay, well, I'm going to commit to do a podcast. And I'm going to start doing that, and I'm going to do it once or twice a week, and so I have 3 different podcasts. That means I only do one Sense of Things a week. I will only do one of the new one once a week. The other show, we do 2 shows a week. And I time block my time for interviews, basically, or when I'm going to do that, to Tuesday afternoons. So my every Tuesday afternoon is time blocked out. My assistant books people for the shows. She's got that one time period to do that. And then I do other people's shows throughout the week. But that's my time block for doing my specific content.
Yeah. Well, and I love how you highlighted, like, this was not just you show up one day and you have multiple shows and multiple books. It was a slow build over the past 30 years. Yep. And like you said, like one thing at a time.
I started really content creation when I went independent. So, that started in 2015. Mm-hmm. I wrote my first book in 2015. I actually didn't write my next book for another 7 years. Wow. 9 years after that. Mm-hmm. And then I wrote, then I went on a spree of like, hey, I want to create a whole bunch of books, and that was, once again, it was AI coming in and me working with AI for about 2 years before I really got it right. And now, between my writing in books and, blog articles and stuff like that, I was telling you before the show, I've created a prompt now as a test where I can give it to my VA and she can basically replicate what my version of ChatGPT does, because I've taught it to write in my style. And if I wrote something and if I put a ChatGPT generated version side by side, you could not tell the difference at this point, because I've specifically done that. Then I gave that to her because I had chat write a prompt and gave it to her, and now she's able to replicate that. So now I don't have to sit there and do it's not as much work as doing by hand.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about like the early days of training ChatGPT for yourself, because there is this whole push and pull in the world right now of like, oh yeah, I wrote a book using ChatGPT, and maybe they don't even say that, but it's clearly this AI piece of garbage book. that you would not want your name behind versus using it to help you create true stories and great client experiences for your book. So talk to me about that.
Well, I mean, first off, I had to learn how to make it right in my style. So, what we had to do is I had to train it for what I call Jeff Kikel style. And there's two different versions of Jeff Kikel style. There's the more kind of loose version, and then there's the more kind of finance and business version. It's a little bit more formal, not really. I mean, I use a lot of humor and all that. And then what I was able to do once I was able to get it there, which really was chat 4 and then chat 40. Now we're on chat 5 or 5 at this point. Chat 4 and 40 started to really learn that, and then they started to add memory to where it stays in the memory. So between chats, it's able to go, oh, Jeff Kikel style. Okay, I can just go in and say, hey, this is what I want to write about. Here's the stuff. Come up with an outline, and then once we get to that point, I'm like, okay, let's go chapter by chapter, writing in Jeff Kikel style. And then here's a story I want to include in that outline. I'll kind of outline a story. So, I mean, this prompt may be, 800 words, but then when I hit enter, it weaves that story right into everything. And it is something that is unique. So nobody can tell me, oh, well, that was done by AI. And, there's these AI checkers that, oh, well, that was done by AI. Well, AI doesn't know my story. So shut up at this point. Yeah, all of you think you know what you're talking about, and you don't. It is my unique stuff. It's just the writing part. What is the difference between using ChatGPT or a ghostwriter? The difference is I don't spend $20,000 for a ghostwriter. I use ChatGPT to do that, but I also never put out content that hasn't been edited. I typically would take something that I might have created in ChatGPT, and I will run it through Claude, which is phenomenal for writing. And I typically would go into Claude and say, okay, take this article. I wrote this article about blah, blah, blah. Here's the audience. Here's what we're trying to do. Acting as an editor with 30 years of experience, please tell me what needs to be improved in this article. And it will come off with this wonderful, like, hey, this is great. This is not so great. And boom, it spits it out. And then typically what I would say then is, okay, go ahead. I like what you said. I don't like this piece. Now implement that into the story. Boom, 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 done. And, then we're ready for production.
I love that concept of using it and telling it to act as an editor with X, Y, and Z in mind. And this is my goal for this content. And I could easily see how that could be useful across the board for anything you're trying to create, even if it was a solo episode and you're someone who is nervous on camera or, just for any application. Because the reason I wanted you on specifically is because you are a financial professional, but you're also a really great marketer. And a lot of financial professionals just, y'all know you're not a good marketer mind. Like, that's why you typically have a marketing department.
Yeah. I mean, most people suck at it, and our industry has not helped by, scaring people into, well, you can't do that or you can't get out there. However, people have been doing radio for the last 60 years in finance.
Yes.
What's the difference between doing radio or YouTube? One, I'm not spending, $1,000 a month getting on the radio for basically a dying audience. I mean, let's be serious. The audience for radio, when I hear people like, oh, well, you should do radio. And I'm like, okay, who listens to radio today?
Yeah.
I don't. I don't even. I theoretically have one in my car. I listen to satellite radio. So I do that, or I listen. I listen to YouTube radio on my phone and plug into my car. I don't listen to radio. So that's a dying audience. Why is that okay for compliance and this stuff isn't? It's just because compliance hasn't had their feet put to the fire to do this.
Well,
You
and
know?
the thing that always struck me was like, okay, let's say you're a financial advisor and you get on the radio, great, but isn't that so much more risky? Like it's live. Like whatever you said is
Yeah.
going. So what is
Yeah,
the
there's no
compliance
edit.
oversight
Yeah.
on that? Whereas
Yeah.
podcasts and YouTube and all that, I mean, we have the opportunity to listen carefully, edit, especially someone who's been in the industry for a while and is attuned to knowing what you can and can't say. I can catch a phrase or even a story or something your guest said, and I can check back and say, hey, are you okay that they said this on your show? Like, is that fine? Or do you want me to cut that section? And a lot of times, the answer is no, like everything's fine. I agree with their perspective. That's why I had them on. We've cut like one or two sentences in like 6 years of business of, editing for financial. So y'all know what to say and what you can't say. So the whole compliance fear is just,
Like I said, it's complete
yeah.
BS. It's just an excuse to not have to do it. I don't put past most of the people in our industry being lazy. That's a way to be lazy. Okay, I just don't want to do it. I don't want to do it, so I'm going to use that as an excuse to not to do it. I used to say this when I would go to networking events. I mean, I am massively introverted. I do not like doing that. And I always used to say it was the white elephant theory or the white rabbit theory. If I'm driving along the road and a white rabbit jumps in front of me, that's a good excuse to turn and then just not go to the networking event. But no, you got to keep going and just go around the rabbit and get to the networking event. Same thing. Find something that you're comfortable with right now. I mean, once again, here's the cool part about, let's say, YouTube. For the first year that you're on YouTube, nobody's going to watch it because you haven't built up anything. For the first, it is just now that we're really starting to get our footing with the Freedom Nation podcast. I mean, now we're getting 10,000 downloads. Before, it was Jeff talking to himself or interviewing somebody on there, and maybe 20 or 30 people would download the episode. So you're gonna suck. I'm sorry. Whether you write a book, the first books I wrote, I read them now and I'm like, okay, we got to redo these because they suck. The first YouTube episodes I did sucked. The first TikToks I did sucked. You're going to suck, but nobody's watching at that time. So spend the time, do the reps, and you'll get better. And then all of a sudden, you're going to start seeing more and more people catch what you're saying, and they're going to like it, and you're going to find your world. You're going to find your audience.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do one episode, I've talked to people. I mean, I haven't reached out to him yet, but I'm trying to think. Seth Godin. If you reach out to him and you say, I want you to be on my podcast, he will be on your podcast, but you have to have at least done 100 episodes before he'll be on your podcast. Because he's like, if you haven't shown me that you're going to do at least that, it is what it is. So, I mean, once again, pick a medium, get on there, suck it up. You're going to just be terrible at it, and it's okay. But the only way you're ever going to get better is to just continually do it. It's just like when you were a financial planner or a broker and you started working with clients and you didn't have any idea what you were talking about, but you just kept doing it and you got better at it and you got more clients as a result.
Yeah, it's that long-term perspective, knowing, I've got to commit to this for years before I really start to feel that traction. So looking just on the website, like for example, on Freedom Day, episode 244 is posted, 244. So can you give us a little bit of like a timeline or an episode number of, how long was it that you felt like nobody was listening? And then kind of like what episode number were you on or around by the time you started to feel traction?
Probably about 70-ish, and that was with promotion. You've really got to have a promotion strategy too, of getting that out on social media and everything else. What's your social media audience and everything else? You've got to always be building that, because then that feeds the podcast. You can't just post a podcast out on, iTunes or whatever and then expect that all of a sudden somebody's going to find your podcast. You got to do some work. And you've also got to get people on your show. If you interview people, you got to get people on your show who are going to promote the show to their audiences and everything else. So, I mean, it took probably 70 episodes, and that's where we started getting some traction. So 70 episodes twice a week, that was pretty much most of a year doing that, just, before we even felt like, oh, okay, people are actually even listening to this now. And quite frankly, they very rarely go on there and comment or something like that. And unless there was something that just was earth shattering for them, more people are watching or listening than you think. And they're just not out there. They're not liking, they're not giving a 5-star or whatever. But if you resonate with them, you'll see those.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that pretty much aligns with the concept of, committing to something for a year or 2 years. I mean, even if you did a every other week show which is real slow progress, but if that's how your schedule looks, then that is what it is. And you committed to 2 years of that, that would get you toward that 70 or 100, and give you that kind of long-term runway where hopefully at that point people are able to binge your show once they discover you.
And I will tell you, you're not going to get clients from the podcast. You're not going to get clients from books. Those are proof to the client that you exist. You're still going to have to use your traditional means of accessing clients. Think of this not as a client acquisition machine. I have never gotten a client out of my podcast. I've never gotten a client from one of my books, but I've gotten clients as a result of my books. I've gotten clients as a result of my podcast. I've gotten clients as a result of the audiobooks that I've done and the YouTube episodes. That's the way you need to think about it.
Gotcha. Okay, so talk to me a little bit about that, because I do talk a lot about my perspective of, podcasting for business, and you are producing calls to action and things like that in your show. But you said you've gotten clients because of this content. So walk me through those people's experience and how that works for you.
I've gotten clients as a result of a podcast because I always do have a call to action. I typically will mix in, I might do 7 or so episodes, and then I will introduce, hey, here's my book in here, or I have this lead magnet or something like that you can download. So I do mix those type of things into the podcast. And then the whole object is to get their email address. I mean, I want to start developing and building a relationship with them. So I want to offer them something. So if you read any of my books, there's at least 15 spots in that book that will talk about, hey, go to, and this is Good Books Today. We'll have, hey, go to this website and download, a resource for the book, or I'll have a special website or a landing page specifically for resources. I do the same thing with podcasts. A lot of times the podcast will say, hey, go to my book, or, here's a book that kind of talks about this subject. So then that leads them down the path. It leads them through the funnel of getting their email address. Once I have their email address, then now I've got the keys to the castle, and I can start to do, I can start to email them on a regular basis. I'm sending them, episodes of my podcast every week as a newsletter, all of that type of stuff. So it's not that I don't get clients specifically. I've never gotten a client that said, hey, I listened to episode 235 and I want to talk to you directly. Yeah. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah. So it's that quick, immediate turnover piece doesn't happen, but it's more of people.
No, we're in a trust business. So, I mean, people have to trust us before they're going to get, people aren't going to give you $1 million if they don't trust you.
Yeah. And if they've listened to one episode or even 10 episodes, that's where it's like, they've probably binged your show, they've probably bought your book, and it's probably been this long process of them consuming and finally feeling like they know each other and that they know you and that they're ready to approach you before they start business. Okay, so that lane of like podcasting for your business is aligned with what I teach. So I really appreciate you walking
Yeah,
through that.
absolutely.
Okay, well, Jeff, where can people find you, follow you? We talked about your episodes and your books and your show, all these different shows. Where's like the best, like central, simple location where we can follow you?
Yeah, you can go to
Mhm.
jeffkikel.com, and on there, basically that's kind of my everything on there. And then LinkedIn is the best place to find me. That's where I spend most of my time on
Mhm.
LinkedIn. So connect with me on LinkedIn, follow me. You can see what I do. I produce articles. LinkedIn is my spot for business clients. So you'll see most of what I produce on there as content is really targeted towards business clients. So you can see what I'm talking about with hyper niching. I produce a newsletter on there with LinkedIn, and then I also produce content, posts, and things like that. But they'll all be mostly focused around business owners and that retirement process. With the launch of my new tax and bookkeeping practice, you'll start to see a little bit of that type of content right now. Me talking about what makes us really different in that world,
Mhm.
which is hype. It's totally separate from my wealth management practice. So
Okay.
I don't do as much wealth management on there, which you guys don't need to know
Yeah.
that. But you can see what hyper niching is.
Yeah. That's a great way to, follow your example and kind of watch what you do and then adapt it to their businesses. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Absolutely. And then reach out to me. I mean, you can DM me, and more than glad to give some advice or whatever on how to get started.
Thank you. I love that. And thank you for being here with me today.
That was excellent. Thank you very much. You're a wonderful interview.
Thank you.